I was still in my scrubs when my phone screamed at 3:47 a.m. My heart dropped before I even answered. Nobody calls at that hour unless something is broken, or someone is gone. Faith, it's Mom, her voice cracked through the silence. I sat up in bed. What happened? There was a pause, then 3 words that shattered everything. Grandpa Walter passed. The room felt colder instantly. My hand started shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. Grandpa wasn't just family, he was the only one who ever made me feel seen. The only one who called me his steady heartbeat. 3 days later, I walked into the will reading expecting grief, maybe awkward silence. Instead, my sister Brooke slammed her palm on the table. "You manipulated him," she shouted. My mother didn't defend me. She just stared, like she wasn't sure who I really was anymore. And when the lawyer said Grandpa left his cabin to me, the room exploded into accusations, whispers, and betrayal I never saw coming. But none of them knew. Grandpa left behind something else. Something that would change everything. And that's where my story truly began. Before I share this chapter of my life, if you've ever felt ignored, unheard, or underestimated, then this channel is for you. Subscribe to Jossy Revenge, where every story has a heartbeat. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The hospital hallway smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee when I got the second call that morning. I had barely processed the first one. My night shift had ended an hour earlier, but I couldn't bring myself to leave the staff lounge. I just sat there, staring at my locker, still wearing my scrubs like I was frozen between 2 lives, the one where Grandpa Walter was alive, and the one where he wasn't. My phone buzzed again. It was my sister, Brooke. I almost didn't answer. "Faith," she said sharply the moment I picked up, "Mom said you haven't called anyone back." "I just finished a 12-hour shift," I whispered, my throat tight. "I'm trying to process everything." "Well, you should come home. Mom is planning the memorial, and there's other stuff we need to talk about." The way she said other stuff made my stomach twist. "I'll be there tonight," I said quietly. She didn't say goodbye. She just hung up. That was Brooke. Always efficient. Always in control. Always the one our mother leaned on for decisions, opinions, approval, everything. Growing up, Brooke was the golden child. Perfect grades. Perfect cheerleading smile. Perfect future lined up like a magazine cover. And me? I was the quiet one who sat beside Grandpa Walter on his porch swing, listening to his stories about storms, fishing trips, and family history nobody else seemed to care about. By the time I reached my childhood home that evening, the driveway was already packed with cars. Cousins, uncles, neighbors, people who hadn't visited Grandpa in years were suddenly everywhere. Grief has a strange way of pulling people together, and sometimes tearing them apart. I stepped inside, and the smell of casseroles and sympathy flowers hit me all at once. Voices filled the living room, but when my mom spotted me, everything felt like it went silent. "Faith," she said, walking toward me. She hugged me, but it felt stiff, like she was hugging someone she wasn't sure she trusted. "I'm so sorry about Grandpa," I whispered. She nodded, pulling away quickly. "The lawyer scheduled the will reading for Friday morning." I blinked. "That soon?" "He wanted everything handled immediately," she said. "You know how organized he was." I nodded slowly. Grandpa loved order. Loved leaving nothing unfinished. Brooke appeared beside Mom, her arms folded across her chest, her blonde hair tied in that tight ponytail she wore when she was stressed, or angry. "You'll be there, right?" she asked. "Of course," I said. She studied my face for a moment like she was searching for something, or waiting for me to admit something I didn't even understand yet. Friday morning arrived too fast. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and polished wood, the kind of place that made everything feel heavier and more official than real life should. Our entire immediate family sat around the long table. My mother sat beside Brooke. I sat alone across from them. That detail didn't escape me. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. Walter Jennings left detailed instructions regarding his estate, he began. My hands rested in my lap, fingers twisting together. I didn't care about money or property. I just wanted one more afternoon on Grandpa's porch, listening to him hum old country songs while carving wood. The lawyer started listing items. Savings accounts divided among grandchildren. Jewelry pieces for cousins. Antique furniture donated to a museum Grandpa loved. Then he paused. And lastly, he said, glancing down at the document, Walter Jennings leaves full ownership of the family cabin to his granddaughter, Faith Jennings. The room froze. I felt every pair of eyes land on me like sudden spotlights. Brooke let out a sharp laugh that didn't sound amused at all. You've got to be kidding me, she said. My chest tightened. I didn't know. Oh please, Brooke snapped, slamming her hand on the table. You practically lived there with him. Brooke, Mom warned softly. No, Mom, seriously. Brooke continued, her voice rising. She just magically gets the cabin? The one property worth actual money? It wasn't about money, I said quickly. Brooke turned toward me, her eyes blazing. Then what was it about, Faith? Did you sit with him every weekend whispering about how nobody else cared? Did you convince him we were all abandoning him? That's not true, I said, my voice trembling. The lawyer cleared his throat awkwardly. There is also a letter Walter asked to be included. My heart skipped. He unfolded a sealed envelope and began reading aloud. Faith, if you're hearing this, it means I'm gone, and I hope you're sitting somewhere peaceful when you listen. The cabin belongs to you because you understand what it represents. It is not an investment. It is memory. It is family. Protect it. Keep it open for those who remember where we came from. My eyes burned instantly. Across the table, Brooke scoffed loudly. He was old, she muttered. Probably confused half the time. The words hit like a slap. Mom sighed, rubbing her temples. Faith, sweetheart, maybe we should talk about sharing it. Brooke and her fiancé have been looking for investment opportunities. Selling it could help everyone. I stared at her, stunned. Grandpa specifically said not to sell it. He also loved Brooke, Mom replied carefully. And he loved you, Brooke added sarcastically. Enough to hand you a vacation property, apparently. My throat closed. I didn't ask for it. But you took it, Brooke shot back. What would you do if your own family looked at you like you'd stolen something, when you were still grieving? The meeting ended in stiff silence. Papers were signed. Lawyers shook hands. But the moment we stepped into the parking lot, Brooke turned to me again. You better not be stupid about this, she said quietly. I blinked. What does that mean? It means you share it, or you'll regret it. Mom didn't stop her. She just stared at the ground. That hurt more than Brooke's threat ever could. Over the next few weeks, the messages started. At first, they were subtle. You know Grandpa wouldn't want the family divided. Brooke has plans for that property. Be reasonable. Then they became sharper. You manipulated an old man. You've always been jealous of Brooke. You're tearing this family apart. Each text felt like a tiny crack spreading through my chest. I started losing sleep. I'd replay every memory with Grandpa, wondering if I'd somehow pushed too hard, talked too much about the cabin, laughed too loudly at his stories, anything that could have looked like manipulation. Have you ever started doubting your own memories because someone else insisted they weren't real? Work became harder. I mixed up medication charts one night and had to triple-check everything to make sure I didn't harm a patient. My supervisor pulled me aside gently. Faith, you seem distracted, she said. I just lost my grandfather, I explained quietly. She softened immediately. Take time if you need it. But I didn't want time. Time meant sitting alone with guilt that didn't belong to me, but still wrapped around my thoughts like fog. 3 months after the will reading, I finally drove to the cabin alone. The road leading there curved through pine trees Grandpa planted himself decades ago. The wooden sign at the entrance still leaned slightly to the left, exactly how it had my entire childhood. I stepped out of my car and just stood there. The air smelled like lake water and pine needles. Wind brushed across the porch swing, making it creak softly, like Grandpa was still rocking back and forth, waiting for me. I climbed the porch steps slowly, each one echoing with memories. Fishing boots lined neatly by the door. The wind chimes Grandpa built from old fishing hooks still sang softly. Inside, everything looked exactly the same. His flannel jacket still hung by the coat rack. His reading glasses rested beside his favorite chair. I sank into the chair and finally let myself cry. "I don't know how to fix this, Grandpa," I whispered into the empty room. My phone buzzed again. It was Mom. I wiped my face before answering. "Hi, Mom." Her voice sounded tired, but firm. "Brooke isn't doing well, Faith. She's been crying non-stop. She feels like you stole something from her." "I didn't steal anything," I said quietly. "You could at least consider splitting ownership," she pressed. "Families compromise." I stared out the window toward the lake, sunlight shimmering across the water exactly the way Grandpa loved describing it, like diamonds floating on glass. "Grandpa asked me to protect it," I said softly. Mom sighed heavily. "Sometimes protecting something means sharing it. Sometimes, protecting something means standing alone." But I didn't say that out loud. "I'll think about it," I whispered. After the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time. The cabin felt warm, safe, like it was breathing memories into the walls. I walked through each room slowly, running my fingers across photo frames and carved wooden furniture Grandpa built himself. Every corner held a story. Every creak in the floorboards felt like a heartbeat from the past. Then I noticed something strange near the hallway ceiling. A small black dome. I frowned, stepping closer. It looked like a camera. My pulse quickened slightly. Grandpa had always been cautious. He used to joke about raccoons stealing fishing bait and neighbors borrowing tools without returning them. But installing cameras? That felt different. I stared up at it for a long moment, a strange chill crawling up my spine, like the cabin wasn't just holding memories. Maybe it was holding secrets too. I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the small black dome attached to the ceiling. My pulse started thumping in my ears as realization slowly settled in. Why would Grandpa install cameras? I whispered to myself. Grandpa Walter was careful, yes. Organized, absolutely. But paranoid? Never. He trusted people, sometimes too much. He believed family meant safety. Yet here I was, staring at proof that maybe he didn't feel as safe as he let everyone believe. I stepped onto a wooden chair and leaned closer. The camera lens reflected a tiny distorted version of my face back at me. Dust had gathered around its edges, but the device itself looked modern, newer than anything else in the cabin. I climbed down slowly, my mind racing. Had someone broken in before? Had Grandpa mentioned anything and I simply forgot? I walked toward his study, my hands brushing lightly against the walls as if they might suddenly whisper answers. The study door creaked open, revealing the exact same smell of pinewood and peppermint tea that always surrounded Grandpa. The desk sat neatly arranged. Papers stacked perfectly. Pens aligned in a glass holder. His old rotary clock ticked softly beside the lamp, each second sounding louder than normal. I lowered myself into his chair and stared at the desk. "What were you protecting, Grandpa?" I murmured. My eyes drifted to a locked drawer on the right side of the desk. I froze. Grandpa never locked drawers. He used to joke that secrets only grew heavier when you hid them. My chest tightened as I reached for the handle. It wouldn't budge. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, thinking. Grandpa had always been predictable in the most comforting way. He hated forgetting keys, so he always kept spare ones in places he called logical hiding spots. Suddenly, I remembered something. I stood up quickly and walked toward the bookshelf. On the second shelf sat an old fishing trophy from a competition he won when I was 10. He always teased that it was his most important achievement, because I had cheered louder than anyone else. My hands trembled as I lifted the trophy. Underneath it, taped carefully to the wood, was a small brass key. My breath caught. "You knew I'd find this," I whispered. I returned to the desk and slid the key into the drawer lock. It clicked open smoothly, like it had been waiting for me. Inside, I found 3 items. A folded letter. A small external hard drive. And a handwritten sticky note that simply read, "For Faith. Only if you need the truth." My hands started shaking again, but this time, it wasn't grief. It was fear. Have you ever opened something knowing your life might never feel the same afterward? I unfolded the letter first. The paper smelled faintly like Grandpa's workshop, sawdust and coffee. Faith. If you are reading this, it means things probably didn't go the way I hoped they would. I changed my will the same day I discovered something that broke my heart. I overheard a conversation between Brooke and her fiancé while they were visiting the cabin last fall. They thought I was asleep upstairs. They talked about selling the cabin the moment it became theirs. Brooke said she wished I would stop dragging things out and just die already. I installed the security cameras that same week. Not because I wanted to spy on my family, but because I needed proof of what I feared was happening. You deserve to know the truth. The recordings are on the drive. I trust you to protect this place, not because you owe me, but because you understand what memories are worth. Love always. Grandpa. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. No, I whispered, shaking my head. No, she wouldn't. But deep down, a small part of me remembered Brooke's constant complaints whenever she visited the cabin. How she called it wasted land. How she talked about turning it into a resort property. I grabbed the hard drive and stared at it like it might burn my hands. For several minutes, I just sat there, breathing unevenly. Part of me didn't want to watch anything. Part of me wanted to believe Grandpa misunderstood. But another part of me, the part that had been drowning in accusations for months, needed to know. I pulled my laptop from my bag and connected the drive. The screen lit up with folders labeled by date and room location. My heart pounded as I clicked the folder from last fall. Several video files appeared. I hesitated. What would you do right now? I whispered into the empty room. Would you watch, or would you walk away and pretend none of this existed? My finger hovered over the mouse, then clicked. The video opened showing the cabin living room. The timestamp read October 14th, 8:12 p.m. The fireplace crackled quietly in the background. Brooke sat on the couch beside her fiancé, Darren. They were sipping wine, laughing softly. At first, everything looked normal. Then Darren leaned back and said, "So, how much do you think this place is worth if your grandpa leaves it to your family?" Brooke swirled her glass casually. "Land alone? Probably close to $1 million if developed properly." My stomach dropped. Darren whistled. "That's serious money." Brooke smirked slightly. "Exactly. Once it's ours, I'm selling it immediately. I'm not babysitting some dusty nostalgia cabin." Darren laughed. "What if he gives it to Faith? She practically lives here with him." Brooke rolled her eyes. "She won't," she said confidently. "Grandpa loves me more. And honestly, if he doesn't hurry up and pass it down, I might lose my mind. He's dragging this out forever." My hands flew to my mouth as the words echoed through the speakers. Darren chuckled nervously. "That's a little dark, babe." Brooke shrugged, sipping her wine. "I'm just saying, it wouldn't kill him to stop dragging things out and just die already." The room around me felt like it tilted sideways. I slammed the laptop shut, gasping for air. No, 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 I whispered, rocking slightly in Grandpa's chair. The sentence replayed in my head over and over. The cruelty. The casual tone. The complete lack of hesitation. I thought about every moment Brooke accused me of manipulation. Every time she claimed I had stolen something from her. My chest tightened with something unfamiliar, not just sadness anymore. It was anger. Raw. Sharp. Burning. I sat there for a long time, staring at the closed laptop, trying to slow my breathing. The cabin felt quieter now, heavier somehow. Like it had been waiting years to release this truth. Eventually, I reopened the laptop and forced myself to watch the rest of the footage. There were smaller conversations. Brooke talking about real estate contacts. Darren discussing renovation plans. Jokes about turning Grandpa's fishing dock into a luxury boat launch. Each clip felt like another crack forming in the image of family I had spent my entire life believing in. Hours passed before I finally unplugged the drive. My eyes were swollen, my head pounding. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. So that's why you trusted me with this, I whispered softly. A strange calm started settling inside me. Not peace, not yet. But clarity. For the first time since Grandpa died, I stopped doubting myself. My phone buzzed suddenly, breaking the silence. It was Aunt Margaret. I answered quickly. Hi, Aunt Maggie. Her voice sounded hesitant. Faith. I've been meaning to call you. I didn't want to cause drama, but there's something you should know. My stomach tightened. About Grandpa? Yes, she said quietly. He told me he installed cameras at the cabin. He was worried someone might try to take documents after he passed. My heart skipped. Did he say who? He didn't name anyone, she replied. But he seemed heartbroken. I've never seen him like that before. I swallowed hard. Thank you for telling me. Faith, she added gently, your grandfather adored you. Don't let anyone rewrite that. Tears slid down my cheeks again. I won't. 2 weeks passed peacefully after that, almost too peacefully. I returned to work. I avoided family gatherings. I focused on patience, routines, quiet nights. Then one evening, as I arrived at the cabin for a weekend visit, I noticed something wrong immediately. The front door was slightly open. My entire body went rigid. I knew I had locked it. The porch swing creaked loudly behind me as wind rushed through the open doorway. My heartbeat roared in my ears as I stepped closer. Hello? I called softly. No answer. I pushed the door open fully and stepped inside. The living room looked mostly untouched, but Grandpa's study door stood wide open. Papers littered the floor like fallen leaves. My chest tightened with dread. I rushed inside the study and froze. The desk drawer was open. Completely empty. The letter, the sticky note, gone. My pulse skyrocketed. No, no, no. Footsteps creaked behind me. I spun around. Brooke stood in the doorway, breathing heavily, holding a stack of papers in her hand. You shouldn't have come back so early, she said. My entire body went cold. What are you doing here? I demanded. She stepped forward slowly. Cleaning up a mistake. That letter belongs to Grandpa, I said, my voice shaking. It belongs to the family, she snapped. And it's clearly fake. It's not fake, I whispered. Her eyes narrowed. You think I'm going to let you destroy my life with some dramatic forgery? I didn't forge anything, I said, standing straighter despite my fear. And you breaking in here proves exactly who you are. Her jaw tightened. You always thought you were better than me, didn't you? I never thought that, I said quietly. I just loved Grandpa. She laughed bitterly. Well, congratulations. You got the house. You got the sympathy. You got everything. I stared at her, really stared, searching for the sister I grew up with. The girl who used to braid my hair before school. The teenager who taught me how to drive. She felt like a stranger standing in front of me now. "You don't understand what Grandpa left behind," I said softly. She smirked. "Oh, I understand perfectly." I took a slow breath, and met her gaze steadily. "I already made copies." Her smile vanished instantly. Brooke's face drained of color so fast it almost scared me. "You're lying," she said, but her voice lacked its usual sharp confidence. I stood still, forcing my hands to remain steady at my sides. My heart was racing so loudly I was sure she could hear it, but something inside me had shifted. The fear that once made me shrink around her had slowly turned into quiet strength. "I'm not lying," I said calmly. "I made multiple copies. The video too." Her breathing grew heavier, her grip tightening around the papers in her hands. "You wouldn't dare show that to anyone," she snapped. "Do you even realize what that would do to this family?" I swallowed hard. The truth was, I had thought about that question every single night since I watched the footage. I had replayed the possible consequences over and over. The fractures. The blame. The permanent damage. But then I remembered Grandpa's handwriting, shaky but certain, asking me to protect the truth. "You already did something to this family," I replied quietly. "I'm just refusing to hide it." Brooke stepped closer, her voice lowering into a whisper that felt colder than a scream. "If you release that video, Darren will leave me. Mom will fall apart. Everyone will hate you." I stared at her, searching for guilt, regret, anything human behind her eyes. Instead, I saw desperation. "Have you ever stopped to think," I said slowly, "that maybe they deserve to know who you really are?" Her hand trembled, but she quickly shoved the papers into her purse. "You've always been jealous," she muttered. "Always playing the victim so Grandpa would feel sorry for you." The accusation hit me like it always had, but this time, it didn't stick. It slid right off the armor I didn't even know I had built. "I loved him," I said simply. She scoffed, brushing past me toward the front door. "This isn't over, Faith." The door slammed behind her, rattling the windows. I stood alone in the study, my entire body shaking now that she was gone. The adrenaline drained quickly, leaving behind exhaustion and a deep ache in my chest. What would you do if the truth had the power to destroy everything you once called home? For the next week, I barely slept. I replayed every conversation in my mind. I watched the video again, and again, making sure there was no misunderstanding, no editing error, no possible explanation that softened Brooke's words. There wasn't. 3 days later, my mom called. "Faith," she said, her voice unusually formal. "We're holding a memorial dinner for Grandpa on Saturday. The whole family will be there." I hesitated. "Okay. I think it would mean a lot if you came," she added. Something in her tone felt fragile, like she was trying to glue broken glass together with her bare hands. "I'll be there," I said softly. Saturday night arrived wrapped in cold rain and heavy clouds. The restaurant Mom chose was one of Grandpa's favorites, a quiet lakeside place with wooden beams and warm yellow lights. He used to bring me there after fishing trips, ordering the same grilled trout every single time. Walking inside felt like stepping into a memory that hadn't realized he was gone yet. Family members filled the private dining room. Cousins whispered. Uncles laughed awkwardly. Plates clinked. The air smelled like garlic butter and forced normalcy. Mom spotted me first. She walked over, her eyes soft but tired. "You look thin," she said, pulling me into a hug. "I've been working a lot," I replied gently. She nodded, then glanced behind her. Brooke sat at the far end of the table beside Darren. She looked flawless, elegant black dress, perfectly styled hair, polite smile pasted across her face like nothing had happened. Our eyes met briefly. Hers hardened instantly. I took my seat quietly, feeling the tension stretch across the room like invisible wires. Dinner started with small talk. Stories about Grandpa's fishing competitions. His terrible singing voice. His habit of giving life advice nobody asked for. For a moment, I almost allowed myself to believe we were still a family. Then Mom stood up, raising her glass. "I want to say something," she announced, her voice trembling slightly. "Your father, Walter, believed family was everything. He wanted us to stay united no matter what." My chest tightened. She continued, "He loved each of you deeply. And I hope tonight reminds us to forgive each other and move forward together." Brooke reached for Mom's hand, squeezing it gently. The gesture looked sweet, convincing, practiced. I stared at my glass, my reflection distorted in the water. Forgiveness. The word felt heavy, complicated, incomplete without truth. The room grew quiet as Mom sat down again. My pulse pounded louder and louder in my ears. My fingers curled around my napkin as my mind screamed two opposite commands. Stay quiet. Speak now. Have you ever reached a moment where silence felt like betrayal, not just to someone else, but to yourself? I slowly stood up. "Can I say something too?" I asked softly. All eyes turned toward me. Mom nodded cautiously. "Of course, honey." My throat tightened as I looked around the table. Faces filled with curiosity. Some with annoyance. Some with genuine sadness. "I loved Grandpa more than I can explain," I began, my voice trembling. "And I know everyone here loved him too. But there's something he left behind, something he wanted the family to know." Brooke's chair scraped slightly against the floor as she shifted. "Faith," she said sharply, "this isn't the time." I swallowed and met her gaze. "I think it is." The room fell into complete silence. My hands shook as I pulled my phone from my purse and connected it to the restaurant's presentation screen Mom had arranged for slideshow photos of Grandpa. The screen flickered to life behind me. Mom frowned slightly. "Faith, what are you doing?" "I'm showing something Grandpa asked me to protect," I said quietly. Brooke stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous." Darren looked confused, glancing between us. I pressed play. The living room footage filled the screen. The same October night. The same couch. The same wine glasses clinking. At first, people leaned forward with curiosity. Then Darren's voice echoed through the speakers. Then Brooke's voice followed. The moment her sentence hit the room, the air seemed to vanish. "If he doesn't hurry up and pass it down, I might lose my mind. It wouldn't kill him to stop dragging things out and just die already." Gasps rippled through the room. Mom's glass slipped from her hand, shattering against the floor. Brooke lunged toward the projector. "Turn it off." But I stepped back, my heart pounding like thunder. "No," I said, my voice stronger than I had ever heard it before. The video continued playing, revealing her conversations about selling the cabin, her plans, her casual dismissal of Grandpa's memories. When the footage ended, silence swallowed the room whole. Mom stared at Brooke, her face pale and shaking. "Tell me that's not real." Brooke's mouth opened, then closed. "Mom, Tell me." Mom cried, her voice breaking. Tears streamed down Brooke's face, but she didn't deny it. Darren slowly stepped away from her, his expression filled with disbelief. "You said you loved him," he whispered. "I did," she sobbed. "You wished him dead," he replied quietly. He grabbed his jacket and walked out without another word. Brooke collapsed into her chair, crying uncontrollably. The room erupted into whispers and stunned murmurs. Some relatives looked at me with shock. Others with sympathy. A few with quiet understanding. Mom sank into her chair, covering her face with her hands. "I didn't know," she whispered. I walked toward her slowly, kneeling beside her chair. "I never wanted to hurt you," I said gently. "I just couldn't carry this alone anymore." She looked at me through tear-filled eyes, her voice barely audible. "I thought you were the one tearing us apart." I thought so too, I admitted softly. She reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. I'm so sorry, Faith. I didn't see you, not really, all these years. Tears filled my eyes as I squeezed her hand back. I just wanted you to believe me, I whispered. Across the room, Brooke sat alone, shoulders shaking as relatives quietly distanced themselves from her table. No one shouted. No one attacked her. Sometimes silence hurts louder than anger ever could. Over the following weeks, the family slowly adjusted to a new reality. Some relatives called me, apologizing for believing rumors. Others kept their distance, unsure how to rebuild trust. Mom started visiting the cabin with me on quiet weekends. She would sit on Grandpa's porch swing, telling stories about my father, memories she had never shared before. It wasn't perfect. But it was honest. Brooke moved out of town 2 months later. I heard she and Darren never spoke again. I didn't celebrate it, but I didn't mourn it either. The cabin remained exactly as Grandpa wanted. A place for remembering, not forgetting. One evening, months later, I sat alone on the porch swing, watching sunlight ripple across the lake. The wind carried the faint sound of wind chimes, just like it had my entire childhood. For the first time, I felt peaceful. Not because everything was fixed, but because I finally understood my worth didn't depend on family approval, it depended on honoring truth, and protecting love the way Grandpa taught me. Moral of the story. Standing up for yourself doesn't always feel strong in the moment, sometimes it feels terrifying, lonely, and uncertain. But I learned that protecting truth is an act of love, love for yourself, love for those who believed in you, and love for the memories that shape who you become. Family isn't about blind loyalty, it's about honesty, respect, and growth. Grandpa didn't just leave me a cabin, he left me courage. And sometimes, the greatest inheritance isn't property, it's the strength to finally be seen. If my story touched you, hit that subscribe button for more emotional tales from Jossy Revenge. And even if it didn't, come on, subscribe anyway, I'll win you over next time. Drop a comment, like the video, and let's keep the stories alive. Thanks for watching.